revealed. The incredible claim that transformed a billionaire's life. Your wife is still alive. Jake Thompson paced the glossy floors of his tech empire, where glass walls reflect both his success and his aloneness. Just beyond the polished exterior, whispers trembled in his mind. The sounds of laughter he once knew were now echoes drowned out by sterile power suits and corporate deals. It had been years since his world had upended, and now he was adrift amidst wealth that felt like a gilded cage. As autumn leaves fluttered outside, a flickering memory of Sarah struck like a bolt, a reminder of the warmth he had lost. The ache, the unbearable void. It surged inside him like a relentless tide. Scaling the heights of entrepreneurship blurred the lines between achievement and existence. Jake expanded his fortune with ambition sharpened by grief. Yet he wandered through board meetings with a heart heavy as concrete, burdened by the weight of triumph without her, shackled by melancholy created from love's absence. It was on one of these somber days that he noticed Sam Collins, an old face from his past, manning a familiar post outside the recently refurbished community center. The lines on Sam's face told stories of unyielding dedication, but today a hint of urgency crossed his features as he called Jake over. Their hands met, a mere touch that stirred something volatile inside Jake. Nostalgia fueled by unresolved pain. "Jake," Sam breathed in low urgency, his voice barely making it above the bustle around them. "What if I told you your wife might still be alive? That she may have faked her death?" A cold shiver raced through Jake's spine. The words struck him like ice water, puncturing the fog of glossed-over grief he had wrapped himself in. Can it be true? The thought spiraled through him, growing twisted and dark. Sam dove into details, piecing together shadows of his late wife's possible motives. Debt, anxiety, fear. "She was scared," he pressed. "The life you built together felt like a prison after the accident. I believe she found a way out." Bruising thoughts collided in Jake's mind, a tempest of betrayal warping the memories of love he held dear. How could she choose to abandon him, leaving him drowning in sorrow? The ambition that had once fueled him now felt flammable, ready to ignite at the slightest spark. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. In the weeks that followed, Jake swirled in a dizzying cyclone of hope and despair. He stepped back into the town that once felt like home, engaging with familiar faces who queried, "How's life in the fast lane?" He wrestled with the pressing urgency to unearth the truth while battling the societal judgment of a billionaire on the prowl. Memories tugged at him like a relentless tide. Moments of joy blended with the bitterness of betrayal. Can I forgive her? Should I want to find her? Each question brought him closer to the precipice of conflicting feelings. Then, one sultry afternoon, a simple envelope appeared at his door. He stared at it, heart clenching tightly in his chest. The familiar handwriting sent an electric shock through his veins. "Jake, if you're reading this, then you must know. I never meant to hurt you." The ink smudged, yet the unearthly promise of a love that might still breathe hung in the air, threatening to unravel the carefully woven facade he had embraced. Torn between his pain and the fleeting hope she had clung to, Jake stood at the edge, ready to plunge into the storm of a love that might tear him apart, but also bring him back to life. Jake's fingers trembled as he held the envelope, heart racing in a rhythm he hadn't experienced in years. Each letter of Sarah's handwriting felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. He paced his sleek office again, but this time the weight of his words gained new meaning. The sterile confines began to pulse with potential, a dangerous, addictive rush that bordered on madness. "What am I doing?" he muttered, guided by a blend of curiosity and pain. The creeping chaos of his feelings sent him spiraling. His thoughts ricocheted between what he once knew and the jagged edges of newfound hope. Could he truly forgive her? Could a part of him find peace in understanding her choices? That evening, he sat hunched over his desk, the familiar glow of computer screens casting long shadows in the room. He logged into social media for the first time in forever. Scrolling through mundane posts, he felt disconnected, yet drawn to find a clue, a whisper of her presence. His fingers danced across the keyboard, searching for anything related to Sarah. In a split second, images of their earlier years, laughter, spontaneity, love, flooded his mind. Did she ever feel this way about him? Was I blind to her struggles? A single search result caught his eye. An article about a woman suspected of living under a different name. A woman who had started a foundation for mental health awareness. As he read, uncertainty gripped him. Was this the answer he had been seeking? Behind every click, he was drawn further into the world he had tried so hard to forget. The following days morphed into a haze of investigative urgency, and with each dawn, Jake found himself awakening with a singular mission. He spent hours poring over public records, discreetly reaching out to old acquaintances, piecing together the fragments of their shared history. The stormy cocktail of emotions transformed into a sharp focus. He became relentless. The chase was not just about discovering her truth, but about revisiting a part of himself he had abandoned. Jake began to confront his demons, acknowledging the fear that had built a fortress around his ambitions. Guilt crept in, challenging him. It begged the question, had he failed to see her plight amidst his climb to success? As he realized the depth of her isolation, a determined flame ignited within him. It wasn't merely about bringing Sarah back. It was a quest for understanding, closure, and perhaps a chance at reconciliation. Each unanswered question became a guiding star, pushing him to dig deeper, to empathize rather than condemn. That evening, filled with purpose, he made a move he had shied away from for too long. He dialed Sam's number. The seconds ticked agonizingly slowly, but when the call connected, it released a torrent of pent-up emotions. "Sam, I need your help. What more do you know? I'm going to find her," Jake declared, voice steady yet charged with an undeniable urgency. A pause on the line felt heavy. Sam's response was laced with both hope and caution. "You need to be ready, Jake. This journey might not only lead you to her, but to confronting things you've buried deep." Jake took a breath, inhaling the crisp air that felt charged with potential change. "I'm ready," he asserted. With newfound resolve, he understood that uncovering the truth about Sarah would be a journey into the depths not only of her fading existence, but of his own buried heart. As he stepped away from the call, a stirring realization formed up inside him. Building the empire was never about power. It was about love, and his ownership of that feeling propelled him onward. But as Jake embarked on this exploration, he had yet to discover what other shadows lingered. Who stood in the way of his reunion? Was there more he was yet to learn about the girl he once cherished? The moment of truth loomed on the horizon, but Jake remained unaware of how much he would have to sacrifice to unveil the woman who may still hold his heart hostage. Days turned into weeks, and Jake's search consumed him. The drive for understanding eclipsed everything else. Meetings, calls, even the brisk coffee breaks he used to enjoy felt like instruments of distraction. His focus sharpened, carving purpose out of uncertainty, yet the discomfort of facing his past clawed at him, relentless. Each piece of information Sam shared added complexity. They discovered hints of Sarah's foundation, narratives of hope, struggles with mental health, stories that tethered her to an invisible crowd. As he learned more about her work, a certain ache developed within him, a mix of admiration and regret. He had always been the ambitious one, chasing after achievements, but now he confronted a painful truth. While he climbed higher in his career, Sarah had fought a solitary battle, often silenced by his relentless aspirations. The moment Jake understood this imbalance, the gravity of his realization nearly took his breath away. His heart pounded in response to a metaphorical reflection of their time together. Did he overlook her needs, always relegating her to the background? That uncomfortable epiphany transformed his inquiry into something profound. It became about more than simply retrieving her. It was about healing the cracks in who he had been all along. Listening to Sam strategize about the next steps, he couldn't help but feel a rising tension within. What if she's changed? What if she doesn't want to see me? His voice wavered, vulnerable for the first time. Sam's silence felt like an eternity, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between them. She's been living a life you don't know, but somewhere in her heart, the memories of you exist. Just be ready. She might not be the only one questioning her journey. With those words echoing in his mind, Jake spent restless nights battling waves of doubt. He analyzed his decisions, realizing that he often reacted without truly reflecting. Tensions at work swelled for the first time. His colleagues sensed his distress. They intended to challenge him, yet he couldn't muster the energy to confront their petty disagreements. Instead, he projected an aura of detachment, retreating deeper into his quest to make sense of his past. Conversing with Sarah's acquaintances was maddening. Each recollection felt like a dagger that pierced his defenses. Her subtle brilliance shone in each story about her advocacy efforts, illuminating just how far they had diverged. "She was always the light," Jake whispered, as he collected anecdotes like artifacts of a life he'd missed. Believing he was closer to finding her, he met with Sam at a discreet cafe, tension palpable in the air. "The deeper I dig, the more I realize there's so much I don't know, about her and even about myself," Jake confessed, voice heavy with apprehension. Sam leaned forward, the edge of urgency in his eyes. Sometimes what we uncover isn't about the person we're searching for. It's about ourselves. Be prepared for the truths that may unfold. Jake nodded absently, his resolve hardening. This journey demanded something from him, a truth-telling mission that demanded authenticity and sacrifice. But as the time to reach out to Sarah drew nearer, Jake stumbled upon a shocking detail that altered everything he believed was possible. A revelation surfaced, detailing a connection she had made with a group of individuals who were not merely supporters, but highly influential figures involved in mental health litigation. It dawned on him that Sarah's network was powerful, and their motives could pose unforeseen challenges. The weight of Jake's past choices contrasted sharply with Sarah's new reality. As he clutched the details that could transform the narrative of their reunion, alarm bells rang in his mind. Could he approach her without being swept away by the tide of his own unresolved emotions? With each passing hour, he felt the tangled threads of his life pulling tighter, ready to snap. And as Jake looked down at the details in his hand, he realized this was just the beginning of an unraveling that could change not only his life, but the lives of those around him. The shadows of the past were closing in, and soon Jake would face a reckoning. He had to confront not only the woman he loved, but the truth of who he had become. Would he step into the light, or would the darkness consume him entirely? The early morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting shadows that danced across the walls of Jake's office. Each glimmer of light felt like a spotlight exposing him to the vulnerability he had been battling internally. He flipped the documents over in his hands. The revelation about Sarah's influential connections had unsettled him, not just about her, but also about what it revealed in himself. The chasm between their paths grew wider as he struggled to reconcile their diverging worlds. As he prepared to sift through the complexities of Sarah's new alliances, an internal dialogue surfacing, he felt compelled to address the tendrils of self-doubt entwined around his ambition. The relentless pursuit of personal success had seemingly erased the essence of what had once bound them together: mutual respect, understanding, and a shared vision of a life intertwined. Jake leaned back in his chair, trying to muster the clarity of focus that had eluded him for weeks. His mind began racing with questions. Was he truly ready to see Sarah, not as a ghost of their past, but as the person she had fought to become? Maybe it's not just about finding her, he muttered to himself. Maybe it's about holding up a mirror to everything I've become. The thought was sobering. He returned to Sam's previous words, echoing in his mind like a persistent tune. It wasn't about simply reclaiming a fragment of his past. It was about confronting the self he had buried beneath layers of professional zeal. What if, upon his confrontation with Sarah, he found not just a struggle to mend, but also an opportunity for radical transformation? Taking a deep breath, Jake pulled out a notepad and began jotting down his thoughts, recalling elements of their relationship that he had pushed aside. He articulated the moments where he overshadowed her light, the times he neglected her needs, and the increasing barriers his ambition erected between them. The ink on the page became an unintentional confessional, a reckoning that made him squirm. It dawned on him that he possessed an innate strength yet to be unleashed: empathy. It had festered in the background as he focused on professional pursuits, yet it was now pushing him toward a greater understanding. The real challenge, he realized, lay not in fully grasping Sarah's intricate web of connections, but in being open to compassion and vulnerability. Suddenly, a swift and determined energy surged within him. He felt a resolve override any lingering fears. He needed to reach out to Sarah, not to demand answers or explanations, but to offer understanding. He was going to face the music of his past choices, to strip away the pretense of a polished success story. Without hesitance, he raised his phone, fingers hovering above the screen, contemplating the message he might send her. Each moment stretched like an elastic band, ready to snap. This was no ordinary text. It was a step toward unraveling not only his future, but accepting the man he had become. A flashing calendar reminder broke the heavy silence: a meeting with one of his key investors. Great timing, he muttered, the urgency of work beckoning once again, temporarily diverting his thoughts from Sarah. As he prepared for the encounter, a sense of foreboding washed over him. Was he prioritizing business again over the self-discovery he had recently embraced? Could he balance both worlds? The looming engagement felt like a tether pulling him back into his old ways, yet this time he recognized the choice. With his heart pounding and mind racing, he entered the conference room, summoning the resolve he had cultivated for this moment. It wasn't just about making deals anymore. It was about who he wanted to be going forward. Even amidst the financial stakes of his environment, he vowed to bring a piece of that empathy into his conversations. As the meeting progressed, Jake skillfully led discussions, yet his thoughts often wandered back to the unseen thread connecting him to Sarah. The day unfolded with successes, but an ember of unresolved tension simmered beneath the surface, a reminder that the confrontation he needed to face lay ahead. The moment was coming when he would have to call her. Would he draw upon the strength he was beginning to cultivate, or let it slip away? He felt the shadows of their past dancing just beyond the periphery of his thoughts, and not for the first time, doubt clawed at him fiercely. Jake's mind raced into the future. He envisioned the call, the possibilities erupting forward. Could he truly convey his emotions, the need for honesty, and the commitment to growth? Tension coiled in the air like an approaching storm. He was on the brink of something monumental, and yet the uncertainty felt like both a curse and a catalyst. As the day wore on, Jake resolved to take action. Tomorrow would be the day he embraced true change, the day he finally reached out to Sarah. But first, he needed to understand something pivotal. What hidden truths lay buried within Sarah that he was yet to uncover, and how much would they change everything he thought he knew about himself? Only time would reveal the answers, but for now, Jake realized he was ready to step into the unknown, armed with an awareness that rekindled the possibility for redemption. Jake awoke with dawn's early light streaming through his window, the sun's warmth a welcome shift from the turmoil inside his heart. Today was the day. He could feel the weight of it pressing down on him, a palpable pressure that urged him forward, yet fear reined him in. After the clarity he had gained, the internal battle raged anew, igniting his doubts like a match in the dark. He poured a cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, and focused on the steam swirling from the mug. This was the ritual that had grounded him, the moment that often led to self-reflection. But today, reflection felt more daunting. He was unearthing long-buried feelings, not only regarding Sarah, but also about himself and the ambitious trajectory that had skewed their shared vision. Jake sank into a chair at the kitchen table, staring at the blank screen of his phone. The device that could bridge the gulf between their worlds now felt ominous, a tool laden with potential rejection and painful memories. He questioned his own readiness to confront the intricate emotions he had skirted around for years. Should he have prepared more? Was he armed with the right words? His thoughts tumbled wildly as he considered what to say, every hypothetical scenario feeling like a weighty stone in his gut. Would she even be receptive? The Sarah he remembered felt like a distant specter, someone he failed to truly understand amid his climbing ambitions. As he sipped the coffee, a strategy began to germinate. Finding the right approach would be crucial. The words, once forming a contented narrative, needed to communicate vulnerability rather than reproach. He envisioned a gentle opening, perhaps reflecting on their shared history, not as a means to manipulate her feelings, but to evoke authenticity in their exchange. The past wasn't an anchor. It was a foundation upon which to stand and face the truth. Jake's determination surged anew. He took a pen and paper, eager to write down his thoughts. He started listing memories, the laughter, the dreams they once shared, encapsulating the essence of their bond. Each stroke of the pen built a clearer image of why reconnecting mattered, both for him and for Sarah. Suddenly, he recalled Sam's words from the night before, about acknowledging the past to pave a way toward healing. Sam's insights had cracked the barrier surrounding what Jake feared was a dusty relic of a life that could never return. The deeper realization that rekindling their connection could also challenge his entire sense of self exploded in his mind. What if Sarah had grown beyond recognition? Did he possess the capacity to embrace her transformation? That thought struck with unsettling clarity, entwining his hopes with anxiety. If Sarah had learned to navigate the world without him, could he still contribute meaningfully? Or would he merely be a fragment of her memory, an unwelcome echo? The personal stakes felt daunting, and uncertainty flickered like an unsteady flame. Time slipped away, and finally, Jake resolved to set a deadline for his action. Enough delaying. He would contact her before the day's end. That commitment, however small, connected him to the emerging man he aspired to be, one who faced uncertainties rather than retreated from them. As he stood to walk towards his office, a sudden ringing of his phone startled him. It was Sam, his ever-reliable confidant. With an unexpected twinge in his stomach, Jake answered, uncertain of whether their conversation would encourage him or spiral him back into doubt. "Jake, I wanted to check in. Have you thought more about Sarah?" Sam's voice was buoyant but laced with concern. "Yeah," Jake replied, the weight of his thoughts pouring into the conversation. "I need to talk to her today." "Good. Just remember, it's not just about what you need, but about listening too," Sam advised, the simple reminder bordering on profound. Jake nodded as if Sam could see him. The act of listening stood as a towering guardian between his spiraling worries and the bravery he needed. "Thanks, I'm still figuring out how to approach it." "You'll get there, man. Just be genuine," Sam reassured him, and the support felt like armor wrapping around Jake's simmering self-doubt. Once hanging up, clarity returned. He would not just speak to Sarah, he would hear her, allowing space for both her past and her present. That intention fueled his actions, igniting a drive grounded in empathy and understanding. As he steeled himself, a new kind of pressure settled on his shoulders. The stakes were rising, and he was on the precipice of a rekindling that might shift their lives irreversibly. What if Sarah shared her struggles and triumphs? What if she revealed an unexpected chapter in her life that cast their past in a new light? With every ounce of resolve, he took a deep breath and opened the door into an uncertainty laden with possibility. Today was the day he would reach out, but what lay ahead remained shrouded in mystery, ready to unravel dramatically. With a mysterious pang of excitement, he wondered what hidden truths about Sarah might emerge and disrupt everything he believed. Jake took a moment to collect himself, his mind racing as he navigated the path ahead. The entire drive to her apartment felt surreal, as though he were moving through someone else's life. Each passing neighborhood blurred into the next, buildings morphing into hazy memories of weekends spent exploring the city hand in hand. With every mile, the pressure in his chest mounted, forcing him to confront the enormity of what he was about to do. As he parked, he noticed a scattering of autumn leaves that danced playfully in the wind, vibrant reminders of change and transformation, an apt metaphor for the impending conversation. But would they be the kind of changes he could embrace? Would he be able to sift through the layers of both his and Sarah's lives to find common ground? With a deep breath, he exited the car, each step towards her door both invigorating and terrifying. He could already imagine their first encounter, the tentative expressions, the inevitable awkwardness. Jake's hand hovered before the doorbell, pulses racing with the weight of unspoken words. He hesitated, recalling Sam's counsel of genuine listening. The fear of rejecting the truth kept him riveted, but he knew there was no going back now. When she opened the door, frozen in surprise, time seemed to stretch. For a fleeting moment, his heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. She looked different, yet the essence of her remained untouched. The familiar glimmer in her eyes mingled with a sharper edge of independence that startled him. "Jake," she uttered, her voice like a song he hadn't heard in years. The simplicity of her breathy tone brought many memories flooding back, nostalgic yet painful. "Hey, Sarah, thank you for letting me come." The words felt inadequate, like an ill-fitting garment. The dissonance between his desire to be eloquent and the raw emotion tussling in his throat nearly paralyzed him. Silence hung thick for a moment before Sarah stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The unfamiliarity of her home resonated with the shifting currents of their past. It spoke of transformations he couldn't yet comprehend. They sat across from one another, the coffee table a chasm between shared histories and uncharted futures. "Why now?" she inquired, gently but firmly, her dark gaze holding his with a piercing intensity. Was she questioning his motives, his timing, or both? Jake took a breath, conscious of Sam's words echoing in his mind. "I've had some time to reflect," he began, searching for clarity in his muddled thoughts. "About us, about everything that's happened since." He paused, choosing his words carefully, aware of the weight they carried. "I've been trying to understand what I lost when I was only focused on my career, and, I guess, what that loss means now." Watching her digest his words, he sensed the moment was shifting. But as he spoke, a storm of emotions brewed within him. Fear of rejection and connection danced alongside regret and hope. Would she share her own reckoning? Her expression morphed into something more contemplative, yet almost guarded, reminiscent of a battlefield general assessing the enemy's strategy. "I finished a project in Paris," she offered quietly, piercing through his floundering thoughts. "I learned to stand on my own, Jake. I've built a life for myself that doesn't include you." The statement hit like a truck, heavy with implications that rattled Jake. He blinked, the air thick with a mix of pride and sadness. Her determination both inspired and intimidated him. "Tell me about it," he urged, yearning to peel back layers of her life while wrestling with his own burgeoning anxieties. The vulnerability in her voice fractured and strengthened with each word. I learned to be strong when I needed it most. After everything, being alone wasn't a curse. It became part of my growth. But it was also lonely." Jake felt the heat of vulnerability radiate from her, realizing that this was his opportunity. He had come expecting to share his narrative, but now he needed to extend the same empathy that Sam had encouraged. "You deserve to live freely. But what about us? Can you see a future where we redefine who we are together?" Her sharp intake of breath made him wish he could rewind time and rephrase his inquiry, reshaping it into something less explosive and more inviting. What if they couldn't bridge the weight of the years apart? What if the chasms between them only widened with each attempt? The silence hung like an unanchored sail, and Jake wrestled with the tangled emotions that clawed at him. He could feel the tides shifting beneath them, and he understood. It was going to take more than nostalgia or yearning to change their trajectory. But before he could collect his thoughts, a distant sound broke through. A crash resonated from the kitchen, momentarily interrupting their intimate exchange. A tremor of concern flickered across Sarah's face. "I'll be right back," she said, needing a reprieve from the heavy atmosphere that suffocated them both. Jake sat there, grappling with his anxiety. He leaned back, contemplating how this unforeseen disruption created a deeper unease. Would he sit here waiting until she reemerged? Or would he seize the moment to confront what had always loomed large? His own demons, the mistakes of the past, and the daunting possibility of transformation. As the silence settled once more, anticipation coiled around him, thick and electrified. He knew now that this was more than a reunion. It was a confrontation of truths he could no longer ignore. He had begun the journey of rediscovering who he was. But was he ready for what Sarah would reveal upon her return? Jake shifted uneasily on the sofa, the fabric rough against his back. He watched the doorway Sarah had just exited, his heart drumming a frantic rhythm. The crash that interrupted their moment echoed in his mind, a sound that felt like an uninvited metaphor for the chaos in his own heart. What had he come here for? To reconcile? To forgive? To seek a future? He squeezed his eyes shut, wishing he could quiet the storm of doubt howling inside him. Sam's voice echoed in his thoughts, a reminder that real conversations required vulnerability. And yet, here he was, wrestling with his motivations. It was easy to crumble into the familiar narrative of blame, to paint Sarah as a stranger who no longer belonged in his life. But every recollection of her spirit and resilience pulled him back, urging him to reevaluate. His thoughts spiraled back to the last few years, Those grueling work hours that rendered him blind to the life swirling outside his office window. The late nights filled with proposals and figures had blinded him to the one person who, beneath it all, had always offered warmth, laughter, and a sense of purpose. Rejected and endangered, he had maneuvered the complexities of his profession, but had overlooked the essence of being human. Jake's attention snapped to the sound of footsteps approaching. Sarah paused in the doorway, a mug in hand, steam wavering in the space between them. The unarticulated tension was palpable, thick yet fragile, crackling with the potential for something life-altering. She eyed her warily, the remnants of vulnerability from their last exchange lingering. "Sorry, she began, her voice grounding yet soft, as if the mere sound could diffuse the chaos within him. "It was just the spice rack falling over." He forced a smile in response. "Good to know kitchens can be chaotic too." The levity felt strained, yet he pressed on, aware that the moment demanded more. "Sarah, listen." His voice trembled slightly as he reached for the right words, the ones that would bridge the distance forged by their time apart. "I can't change the past. I know I hurt you. But what I'm hoping for is to find a new beginning." She took a sip from her mug, her gaze steady yet unreadable. The subtle tension in her posture spoke volumes. "A new beginning? After all that's happened? Why should I believe you now?" "Because I've woken up." The raw honesty hung between them like a tense string, waiting to snap. "Until very recently, I was sleepwalking through life. Every decision was anchored to success at work, while you were out there, living fully, pursuing your dreams. And in that, I realized I don't want to exist in a half-life anymore. I want to be present, to find out who I can become, not just as a professional, but as a partner, if you'll allow me that chance." Her brow furrowed as he spoke, uncertainty mingling with hope in her expression. He could see her weighing each word, each sentiment he laid bare. She had built an identity apart from him, but maybe, just maybe, they could intertwine those identities without losing themselves. "I understand if you are hesitant, if you feel that we've crossed a point of no return, but I hope we can explore this uncertainty together." The weight of his own words landed heavily on him. He could feel the moment stretching, riding the waves of potential rejection. Jake fought against the urge to back away. This conversation required him to lean into discomfort, to expose his vulnerabilities like shards of glass that could either cut or illuminate. Sarah set down her mug, tilting her head slightly. "Are you asking me to forgive you?" "Not just that," he swallowed hard, aware that forgiveness might be only the surface. "I'm asking for a chance to rebuild, to redefine what we can be moving forward. But I can't do that if you don't want it. So this is me, fully transparent, ready to confront the possibility of failure." For an agonizing moment, her silence felt like a dark anticipation, and he held his breath, fearing what her answer might be. Then she sighed, a sound that seemed to release tension from her body. "This isn't going to be easy, you know, and maybe it's foolish of me to even consider it." "Foolish or brave," he replied quickly, "it's still a step." As her eyes searched his, Jake knew they stood on the precipice of uncertainty, their futures balancing delicately on the edge of possibility. Each was a reflection of the other's fears and desires, a raw and unfiltered confrontation with everything that could go right or horribly wrong. "Let's talk about our mistakes," she finally said, a new resolve settling in her tone. "If we're going to move forward, we need to lay it all on the table. No more hiding." Jake's heart raced, the gravity of her words propelling him forward. "Yes, let's do it. I'm ready to open up." But even as he spoke, a lingering dread settled in the pit of his stomach. He had begun to grasp the complexities of their past, But would he be prepared for the truths Sarah was willing to unveil? Without realizing it, they had just crossed a line. The only question now was whether they could navigate the treacherous waters ahead without losing each other again. He took a breath, the tension mounting as he waited for her to lay bare the depths of her own story. Could he truly confront what he'd never understood, or would he find himself adrift in revelations he wasn't ready to face? The moment felt precarious, yet filled with the hope for renewed connection. Jake felt the weight of Sarah's words settle on him like a thick fog, invading every corner of the room. As they both sank into the reality of their shared past, the air grew heavy with unspoken truths and buried emotions. Jake had spent so much time shrouded in his own ambitions that he had become a stranger not only to Sarah, but to himself. But here they were, standing at the edge of vulnerability. "All right," Sarah said, her voice firm yet hesitant. "I'll start. I guess I've been holding on to a lot. When you spiraled into your work, I took it personally. I thought maybe if I pushed harder, if I was more accommodating, you'd come back to me. But the more I tried, the more you retreated." The crack in her voice cut through him, revealing the hurt he had inflicted. Jake nodded, steeling himself against the onslaught of regret that surged within him. "I was so wrapped up in my own world that I never noticed. I thought I was doing it for us, for our future, to build something substantial." He paused, wrestling with the realization. "But I neglected what was already valuable. I wasn't building a life. I was constructing a barrier." He watched as her expression shifted, disappointment mingling with understanding. "I wanted to feel like I mattered to you, Jake. Instead, I felt like a mere afterthought." Her words reverberated in his chest, digging deep into the shadows of his psyche. For years, he had chased the allure of promotions and accolades, validating his life through the lens of financial success rather than emotional connection. But in that chaotic pursuit, he had sacrificed the very love that brought him joy. "Every time you missed an important moment, my exhibition, my promotion, you didn't just miss a date on a calendar, you clarified my fears. It was as if you were choosing a different life, and it hurt so much to realize I was losing the man I loved to a career that demanded everything but our happiness," Sarah confessed, her voice trembling but resolute. A cold shiver raced through Jake. Each word felt like an unraveling thread that tugged at him, compelling him to confront not just his past, but his role in it. "I was scared," he admitted, each syllable laced with sincerity. "I thought if I worked hard enough, I could provide stability. But I realize now that true stability comes from having each other." The air shifted again, laden with a complex mix of sorrow and new hope. "I don't want to just apologize, Sarah. I want to show you who I can be, the man who can listen, who can prioritize what matters." He hesitated, then added, "Can you help me find that person? Because the further we go, the more I realize I need you in all of this." A moment passed as Sarah regarded him, her features softening yet guarded. "Jake, this isn't a quick fix. It's going to require more than just words. It's going to take action, patience, and a commitment to healing. We're both missteps away from falling back into old patterns." "Yes," he said eagerly, fueled by a determination that had been long dormant. "But I'm committed to doing the work. I want us to redefine everything. How we interact, what our priorities are. It starts now. I don't want to be the man who wakes up at the end of his life regretting what he didn't do." "Then we'll need boundaries," she said, a new clarity in her voice. "Let's set expectations and boundaries that reflect what we each need to rebuild trust and respect." Jake nodded. The realization that he had to change, not only for Sarah, but for himself, was a heavy burden yet a liberating one. He could feel the dense clouds of the past slowly lifting, allowing light to seep in and illuminate their path forward. As they navigated their complex feelings in that small room, Jake felt something shift within him, a rekindled belief that growth was possible, that he could emerge from this stronger and more attuned to the rhythm of life outside his ambitions. But just as clarity was beginning to settle, Sarah reached for her phone, a sudden frown crossing her face. "I've got a message," she whispered, her eyes widening as she read the text. "It's from my brother. He's in trouble. I need to go." "You can't leave yet." The words flew from his mouth in a mix of desperation and dread, knowing that the fragile moment they had forged was at risk. "I have to, Jake. Family comes first." He felt a tightening in his chest, the impending chaos of her departure threatening to unravel the progress they had made. "Just promise me you'll call when you can. I want to keep this going," he urged, panic lacing his voice. As she slipped out the door, Jake's thoughts spiraled once more. Had he done enough? And who was he becoming amidst all this turmoil? He could no longer ignore the looming shadows in his life. He sat back down, the echo of his own resolve rattling in his mind. If he was going to change, truly change, he had to confront what Sarah's brother was dealing with, and confront his own fears head-on. The question weighed on him heavily. Would stepping into the fray help him understand what was at stake, or would he find himself overwhelmed by circumstances beyond his control? Jake paced the dimly lit living room, the subtle ticking of the clock amplifying his mounting anxiety. Sarah's departure felt like a tangible absence, a void he was not accustomed to navigating. The echoes of their conversation replayed in his mind, a constant reminder of his commitment to change, yet here he was, frozen by uncertainty. He glanced at the scattered remnants of his past choices, the framed accolades on the shelf, the sleek briefcase leaning against the wall, each a symbol of the ambition he had clung to for so long. They now appeared like remnants of a distant life, a life that had cost him the connection he so desperately desired to rebuild. "Think, Jake, what would it mean to actually support Sarah?" he muttered to himself, the words hanging in the air like a challenge. He realized that genuine support wasn't merely about being there for the significant moments. It was about understanding the complexities of her life, the struggles that she grappled with. His heart raced at the prospect of stepping outside his comfort zone, of not just being the observer, but an active participant. He picked up his phone, Sarah's brother's name flashing in his mind. "I need to find out what's going on," he decided, his fingers hovering over the keypad. But as he hesitated, he felt fear coil around his resolve. What if stepping into the fray only complicate things further? How could he help when his own foundation felt so shaky? So much of his life had revolved around control, tight deadlines and strategic decisions, the thrill of sealing deals. But now, the unpredictability of family drama loomed larger than any business deal. As he pondered, he recalled Sarah's words, the weight of her pain and their shared history. "You can't be the man who avoids challenges anymore," he admonished himself. "You must confront what lies ahead." He set the phone down, unwilling to call just yet. Instead, he looked around the room, spotting Sarah's paintings lining the walls, vibrant expressions of her spirit, passion distilled into colors and form. Those works captured emotions he had failed to recognize concurrently. What if he channeled some of that creativity into his approach with her brother? He scribbled notes on a notepad, jotting down questions to ask once he reached out. "What does your brother need? How can I help him?" The thoughts flowed, each line igniting a flicker of determination. Planning was not merely about business. He realized he could implement it into the emotional aspects of his life too. Jake passed by the kitchen and made himself a cup of coffee. As the rich aroma filled the air, he felt a small surge of clarity. He would not merely wait for Sarah's call. He would take proactive steps. Reaching out to her brother could open a door, not only for him to learn about Sarah's issues, but also for understanding how he could genuinely contribute in a way he had never done before. Taking a breath, he dialed the number Sarah had once shared. The ringing tone drummed in his ear, each ring echoing a throb of anticipation. When a voice answered on the other end, gruff, filled with apprehension, Jake felt a sudden rush of determination. "Hi, this is Jake. I know we haven't spoken before, but I'm Sarah's partner. I heard you might need help." There was a moment of silence, heavy and uncertain, but the tension broke as the voice responded, a mix of relief and disbelief. Jake's heart hammered. This was his chance, a moment to step away from his past, away from himself, and commit to confronting the uncertainty that lay ahead. As they discussed the situation, Jake felt a pulse of understanding. Each word exchanged was a bridge built, not just for Sarah's brother, but for himself too. He was no longer the man trapped in ambition. He was becoming someone who could offer support in tumultuous times. "Thanks, I can really use someone who understands," the brother said finally. And for the first time in a long while, Jake recognized the weight of validation in his own capability. But just then, another notification buzzed on his phone. He glanced down to see a message from Sarah. "I'm not sure how long this will take, but I need you to trust me while I figure this out." Jake felt the panic rise again. Trust was one thing, but what if she needed more than he could give? Could he be the pillar she needed, or would he crumble under the pressure? Doubt gnawed at him, juxtaposed with a flicker of hope. The path ahead was fraught with complexity, but this time he was ready to engage, not just for Sarah, but for his own evolution. With newfound purpose, he prepared to embrace whatever lay ahead. But as he contemplated the next steps, a haunting thought lingered. What if this was about more than just healing a relationship? What if this was the beginning of a transformative journey that would redefine him entirely? Days turned into a considerable blur for Jake Thompson as he navigated the aftermath of that pivotal conversation with Sarah. Determined to foster genuine change, he found himself firmly planted in an unfamiliar territory. The weeks following their reunion held a weight he hadn't anticipated. Each moment was a stepping stone, carefully revealing layers of his commitment to both Sarah and himself. Through each interaction with her brother, he found purpose and clarity, feeling the remnants of his ambitions start to reshape. Jake threw himself into supporting Sarah's brother, helping him navigate family struggles that at first felt chaotic but slowly morphed into enlightening experiences. He engaged in meaningful conversations that demanded patience and vulnerability. No longer could he merely rely on past laurels. He had to embody the values he had neglected for so long. In listening to her brother's concerns and challenges, Jake embraced the authenticity he had always yearned for in his personal life. His professional life became less of a gilded cage and more a guiding force, as he began applying empathy into his leadership style. With every meeting he led, he encouraged his team to voice their opinions and foster dialogue about mental health, acknowledging that his own past had left those around him feeling unseen. For the first time, he worked to create an environment that celebrated individuality, acknowledging their struggles and victories alike. Transformational changes were evident. His colleagues began commending Jake not just for his financial acumen, which they had always respected, but began seeing a leader who genuinely sought well-being. Jake was proving to himself and those around him that he was capable of balancing his ambitious drive with sincere compassion. The recognition felt profound, a stark contrast to the hollow achievements of before. Meanwhile, as he and Sarah began to reconnect deeper, conversations unfolded where laughter was finally interwoven with vulnerability. They explored their dreams and ambitions openly, allowing for discussions that coalesced their individual pursuits into a shared vision. The transformation echoed in their relationship, where both felt valued and understood, the very antithesis of what had existed previously. Their respective journeys intertwined, exemplifying a rebuilt partnership where Jake no longer felt like a figure isolated by success. Together, they started nurturing both personal and joint aspirations. Jake even encouraged Sarah to pursue initiatives for her foundation, inspired by the stories of individuals who found hope through her previous work. Their reconnection culminated in a genuine night out, one full of shared laughter over kaleidoscopic memories that stitched together their past with their present selves. At that moment, Jake felt something solidify. An unwavering sense of confidence surged within him, born from authentic growth and a commitment to emotional transparency. On that enchanted night, illuminated by moonscape light, he turned to Sarah, his voice steady and sincere. "I never believed I could grow so much in a span of just months. What we've built, this isn't just an opportunity. It's a renewed life I thought I might never reclaim." Her gaze, luminous and warm, reflected an understanding that transcended mere words. "Jake, this isn't just about you. It's been a journey for us both. I had to find my independence, but you showed me that love doesn't have to be sacrificed for growth." Edging closer to Sarah under the starry skies, Jake understood. He had conquered the invisible barriers that had once isolated him. He no longer sought validation in external accomplishments, but in the strength of emotional connection. They stood no longer as vestiges of their past, but as two individuals who had transformed pain into understanding, a dynamic duo pioneering new beginnings. As the night faded into dawn, Jake Thompson emerged not just as a successful entrepreneur, but as a man with solid confidence, recognized competence, and an established position in both his career and heart. He had achieved precisely what he had unknowingly desired all along, a deep-seated fulfillment that radiated from within. This was his moment. Now, harnessing the fervor that guided his journey, he implores you: subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could change your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. What would you have done differently? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. It could spark their journey too. Don't wait even one more second to engage. Your support is crucial to continue exploring these profound stories together.